Hey there, my name is Timothy Roberts. I am an independent cymbalsmith, and today I want to talk about the truth about vintage cymbals. Now, by vintage cymbals, I'm referring to cymbals that are made pre-1980, and specifically I want to talk about Zildjian old Ks. There are old A's from Zildjian, there are older Pistes, but in this video I want to talk about the most coveted vintage cymbal, which is the old K. And I have two of them that I'm going to pull out and show you, talk a little bit about them, and the specific ones that I have are new stamp old Ks, which dates them between the mid-1960s and the mid-1970s. Now, there are other types of stamps with old Ks. There are the old stamp old Ks, there are the intermediate stamp old Ks, and the new stamps. They all have tons of lore, tons of history, tons of specs within those, and I'm not really a cymbal historian. I'm a cymbal maker. For this video, I really just want to talk about the overarching concept of these vintage cymbals and give you a little insight from a maker's perspective about these cymbals so that you can make a good choice whether or not you're looking to buy one or how you view or interpret these cymbals and these cymbal sounds. I would like to, if possible, kind of pull the curtain back a little bit so that we can have a more informed view on these older cymbals and what their value really is. Now, if you see an old K on Reverb or online somewhere for purchase, you will notice that it is very expensive. Some old Ks that are in great condition and in the right size and weight configuration that is most desirable, you can see those cymbals go for over $2,000 just for one cymbal. And there's some reasons for this that I want to dive into now. Please be aware that there are plenty of other perspectives out there than mine, so take mine with a grain of salt. This is just my take, being someone that has made cymbals for years now, modified cymbals for years now. So the big question that comes up for me is, are these cymbals worth the price tag that they have? And that answer depends, honestly. For collectors, for people that really have a value for the historical significance of these cymbals and what they mean to music, to instrument manufacturing, they absolutely have the value and are worth the value for people that are in that zone, in that collector historian type zone. So if you can find a really well-kept old K that's in great condition and it hasn't been tampered with, no extra holes have been drilled, no cracks, no flea bites, and if you're a collector and you want to get it, then maybe it's worth over $2,000 to you. For me, as a musician first and as a manufacturer of these instruments second, I'm always going to go off of the sound and the functionality, and does this cymbal or this instrument help me make music? So to answer that question of are these cymbals worth it, let's talk about some of the things that you can come across with these older cymbals, because if you can be as informed as possible, you can make the decision whether or not these cymbals are worth it to you. Cymbals are made of copper and tin, and the most typical combination of those is called B20, which means there is 80% copper, 20% tin. That varies a little bit because there's other trace elements in there. This is important because the type of alloy that bronze is, which is made up of copper and tin, it's a type of alloy that doesn't fully form into a new element. The copper and the tin stay sort of in their own elements, and once the bronze is made, once the cymbal is made, instantly it's trying to separate and find, the tin is trying to find the other tin, the copper is trying to find the other copper. And so over a really long period of time, like hundreds of thousands of years, there's theories out there that if you left a piece of bronze sitting in 300,000 years, they would fully separate and be two separate metals sitting next to each other. And for our purposes as drummers, as enthusiasts of cymbals, we're really looking at how that separation process affects the sound and the durability of the cymbal over the course of decades. These vintage cymbals that are old Ks or old As or whatever they are, over the course of like 30, 40, 50, 60 years of age, that process of separation has had time to develop. And what that means is these cymbals can be brittle. A lot of older Ks have cracks. They'll have flea bites. They'll have cracks around the bell, possibly cracks within the lathe grooves. And if you really wail away on an old K, you really risk cracking it. This brittleness is not necessarily a one-dimensionally bad characteristic about old cymbals. It actually has a huge effect on the sonic quality of the metal. That brittleness can allow some old Ks to, if they're really lightweight, they can almost play like they're heavier, which means they have a tighter stick, a drier stick. And then somehow the heavy cymbals can play like they're lightweight cymbals. They can have a lot of life, a lot of complexity to them. There's really just a high dynamic range with some of the good old Ks because of this aging process. So a lot of the mystique and a lot of the intrigue surrounding these vintage cymbals, to me, has to do a lot with the fact that the most quintessential jazz records of the era were being played on these older Ks and these old As. So if you love Elvin Jones, if you love Tony Williams, that's what they were playing in the 60s. In the 50s, in the 70s, they were playing those cymbals. And one thing to keep in mind is oftentimes when people will listen to those records from the 60s, hear that cymbal sound, go out and try to find an old K to purchase. But you got to remember that cymbal in the 60s was a new cymbal. So it did not have the aging process that it had, 60 plus years of age to get it to the point where it had all these extra characteristics that we associate with old Ks today. They were new back then. So that begs the question, what makes these cymbals special? And I've got a couple opinions on that, and you guys can let me know what you think in the comments below. But to me, I might be biased as an independent cymbal maker, but to me, those cymbals can be special. The good ones can be special because they are handmade. They are not machine made. They're not hammered in a perfectly uniform way. There was an artisan sitting down at an anvil with a hammer, shaping the bronze. And because of that, there was a beautiful imperfection with the way those cymbals are shaped. They have weird shaped bells. They have weird shaped profiles. They're not perfectly uniform. They'll have real crazy humming spots where there's little zones on the cymbal that sound different than other places. And with the good old Ks, that somehow coalesces into this really beautiful complexity that's incredibly inspiring to play. Now, inconsistencies in the way it's shaped, and if it isn't done intentionally, can lead to a very bad sound as well. It's a very fine line between the most amazing old vintage cymbal and a just totally terrible sounding old cymbal. And that line, there's some kind of magic to it, I think. And to me, if I was to break down what that magic is, I would say it's just the human element. It's the element of a craftsman sitting down with a piece of bronze, creating a cymbal. So let's take a look at these two old Ks that I have. Now, I'm going to make a separate video about what I did to these cymbals because they were sent to me for a modification. But I'll talk to you. I'll pull them out now. I haven't touched the tops of the cymbals, so they look like they did before. I've already done the modifications on them, but I'll talk to you a little bit about the setup of these cymbals and what makes them special and what makes them sound the way that they do. First up is this one. This is a 22-inch old K, new stamp, so it dates between the mid-60s and mid-70s, and it is 2190 grams, and it is rather tall. It's probably hard to see from this distance, but this is a tall cymbal. Tall umbrella-shaped cymbals have a higher pitched sound, and they're a little bit more chime-like in their tonality. They can be a little bit harder to control and contain because they really open up. The sound can be almost melodic in a way that needs to be balanced really finely in order to be musical. Sometimes they can be overly musical, and it almost sounds like they're coming across as a particular pitch that can have a lot of dissonance in it. And overall, umbrella cymbals are tricky to deal with. This is an umbrella cymbal, and I'll clip the before video of what this cymbal sounded like so you can get a sense for what I mean. But the other thing about this cymbal is it's got a fairly misshapen bell. The center hole is actually not quite in the center of the bell. It's a little bit off. And this side of the bell is actually kind of bumped on the left. So it's kind of a misshapen bell, which means depending on where you hit it around the bell, you get a different sound. This also feeds into the body of the cymbal, so there are different zones that this cymbal, different tones that it has in different zones. It also leans pretty heavily to one side, that being because the center hole is not in the center. This is super common with the bells of these older rides. What they would do is they would actually take a stack of these bronze blanks when they came out of the oven, and they would use a sledgehammer to hit a die that would press the bell into shape. So if you can imagine, if it was the top piece of bronze, it would have the biggest bell, and as it went down in the layers, the bottom piece would have a smaller bell, and depending on how the strike happened, it could have been like ever so slightly off, which would mean these bells just had weird shapes. This is also a reason why they were so the quality, the sound quality of them varied so wildly. Here's the second ride I have. This is a 22, and before I did the modification, it weighed over 3,000 grams, so it was a lot heavier. But as you can see from the side view, it was also a lot flatter. The shape was a lot lower. Low shapes mean low pitches. Higher weight means a higher pitch. So you have this low fundamental, but with a lot of stick definition that's pretty bright. Again, with the bell, it's very, very weirdly shaped. Again, the center hole is not right in the center. This side of the bell is bumped up, and the other side is dipped down. So that leads to different tones around the bell. Different tones are right below the bell. And again, the cymbal leans heavily to one side. But this one is actually a very special one, and when I get into the modification I do on these in a future video, I'll talk about taking the weight down and what that did to the sound of the cymbal. But this kind of shape, this lower shape, and the weight that I now have it in is really a prized find for collectors and old K enthusiasts. If you can find old Ks that are in good shape, no cracks, no keyholes, and they have a little bit of a lower shape, and they have a little bit of a lower weight, that's where you find the cymbals that a lot of jazz drummers totally covet. Okay, so in conclusion, old Ks can be super special and they are very expensive. Is that expense worth what you're getting? It totally depends. If you're a collector, absolutely. If you're a drummer, you might want to look at some other options. Not to be self-serving here, but I'll go ahead and give my plug as an independent cymbal maker. There are plenty of other independent cymbal makers that make amazing stuff. A lot of them are my buddies and friends, and we are making handmade cymbals in a pretty similar fashion to the way that they were making these older Ks back in the 60s or even earlier than that. This art form goes back hundreds of years, and for the most part, it's been an art form that's been done by hand by a craftsman with a hammer and an anvil, and then with a lathe, a human interaction with this piece of bronze, which when you find a maker that has the kind of taste that connects with you as a player, they're really crafting the metal, but they're also going after the sound as well. They're going after, how does the cymbal speak? Will it work in the musical context? A lot of my independent cymbalsmith buddies, we're all drummers. We all played music first. We love the drums. We love cymbals. And that's what got us into this art form. So when I make a cymbal, I'm making it so that it will be played in a musical context. I'm not just a craftsman. I'm not just hitting the metal in a certain way to get a certain shape and that's it. I'm doing that so that at the end of the day, it leads to a particular sound that works for the modern drummer. Okay, so let me know what you think in the comments below about this video. What's your take on the old K phenomenon? Are these cymbals worth it? Are they not worth it at all? Drop a comment below. Please hit the subscribe button and the bell if you like this video, and keep an eye out for the next video where I dive into modifying a couple of these very valuable old Ks, and I'll talk a little bit about how I decided what was needed with these particular cymbals, and then you'll get to hear the before and after clips. Until then, see you guys next time. I'm Timothy Roberts.